Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. Tonight I'm super excited to bring you a review on this little guy right here. This is the Knafs Lander, designed by Ben Petersen. So I'm going to end up going over in this video what I like, what I love, what I dislike, and if it applies, what's rubbish about the Knafs Lander. Before we do that though, let's go ahead and get some size comparisons out of the way. First, we're going to kind of go ahead and show a pretty, full-size knife here. And a knife that's become more popular and common. So this is the 80-20.5 Demco. And then a little bit more of a common small knife for sure. This is the Chris Reeve Knives Small in Inkosi. So you can see that we're not too far off from the size of the Inkosi and the size of the Lander. But we'll talk about why there is some differences there, in a little while. And if we end up going ahead and butting the knives back to back, my standard comparison was a pair of 3. Don't have a pair of 3, but I am going to have something that's just about all you have, and it is a double A, sorry. So as you can see, with the thickness here, it is about 3/4 the thickness of a AA battery. So hopefully that goes ahead and helps you out. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in. So first, what do I like about this? Well, what I like about this knife is the price, first of all. This knife comes in at a really attractive price point. One that, is kind of hard to set just about anybody, whether if you're just getting into EDC or you're an avid collector, or you're just wanting to buy one good knife, right? And you stumbled across this video. So this knife is $58, cuts right under that 60 mark, and for that, you're going ahead and getting a knife that is decent all around. Next thing that I do like kind of getting into that is fit and finish. Overall, this is just hitting all the marks. There's a lot to like here. It's not doing anything that is like, world-changing perfection or anything like that, right? But at the same time, there is a lot that is perfect about this knife. It is, nearest makes no difference, perfectly centered. Has a pocket clip that is centered, it's not canting one way or another. Has a perfect detent. A good, fun action to play with. And is smooth. Not like super drop shut smooth, but it is smoother than you think it would be. And all with no blade play. I always have to check it because I'm surprised at how smooth it is. So those are things that I do like about it. The next thing that I like overall is just the sort of look of this knife. I like it because it's just pure Ben. If you know Ben, he came from Blade HQ, and he has these different design philosophies and everything that he's coming from CRKT and then working at Blade HQ, both in size, passing the finger test, the way that he uses the knife, the way that he holds the knife. He, doesn't like things that, force your hand in certain places, right? Like maybe these guys do, but he likes something that's just a little bit more free-flowing and a little bit more fluid. So this definitely checks all those boxes, and, even though it's just like generic knife, right? You kind of like that right here. And there's some cool things going on, the way that this swoops down and has this belly here and this flat. It's just a, attractive generic knife, right? Can't complain there. So that is something that I do like about the knife as well. Next thing that I do like is that this is in D2 steel, right? D2 is nothing to super duper write home about, but it's also something that I feel like somewhat gets a little bit too much hate because we just expect to see it as the bare minimum now. Sort of the old, 8CR13 MOV. I don't like that stuff, right? Aussage is, not a big fan. D2 is something that I don't have a really big problem with, especially if you get it in a coated version like this, where you are kind of defeating the one big problem, which is the corrosion resistant, and I keep my stuff oiled all the time, and I don't cut wet stuff anyways. So really, I mean, D2 just works for me, right? It does keep an edge. You know, it has some sort of toughness. Sometimes it gets a little chippy if it's not heat treated right, but, you know, from this, I've had, you know, no sort of problems. And for me, you know, it's kind of easy to, you know, sharpen up on something like a coffee mug if you know what you're doing, or, you know, a ceramic rod. So not really too much to complain. Not the greatest steel for sure, but yeah, not bad. So those are all the things that I really like about the knife overall. Then let's go and jump right into what I love, because with a lot of products from Ben and a design from him, there's a lot to love here. So the first thing is the attention to details, right? Ben, coming from the knife industry, has had so many different knives through his hands. He kind of has these like converging ideas from all sides, where he's tried all these different things and sort of got it honed in perfectly in the middle to go to make the Lander, right? And you can see that there's so many attention to detail from things that actually matter. Things like for example, this is rounded in the back to perfectly flow into here, so there's no sharp corners. But that also means when you grab on the knife and you roll up here, there isn't a sharp edge to pinch you. It just rolls right up under the skin easily and interfaces with the stop pin. Easy. Also, things like this awesome pocket clip. Not only is it deep carry, and it just barely goes to a little bit above the back, it doesn't stick out crazy town like this though, and go too much, so it doesn't create a super bad hot spot. Also, it's not only flush mounted screws, but it's also flush mounted inside of the scale. They've cut out a portion of the scale and dropped that in. To that point as well, even though they've done that, they've actually come out with this little facing plate here, which makes it where it's not unattractive that you have that part of the knife sitting in there, because you're going to have this little plate that's going to fill in that spot and not make it sharp and just make it more aesthetically pleasing. Also, you have things like this really nice nested liner that has a proud liner that is cut here so you can easily get and jimped, but not sharp at all. And when you look at it this way, it's not cutting into your finger. You know, when I first got this knife, I was afraid that when you grip it too hard, like some knives, if you grip it, you touch that liner, it starts creating play up and down. Not something that you have to worry about when I'm going ahead and using this. I've never encountered that. But it's also easy to be able to disengage easily, and it drops down on your fingernail, and then you just shake really easily and it drops down. So if you need to cut something, go like this, like that, put it back in your pocket. You've opened it and closed it almost as quick as you would something like an axis lock, and you didn't even think about it, right? There's no like shaking or any, it just works, right? And that's what's great about this knife. It just works overall. Also, even though this has a sort of flattened scale, these are slightly contoured on the edges here, so there's no hot spots, and because there is no ramp that is super intense here, or any grooves, kind of like I was talking about with the Inkosi. The Inkosi fits me perfectly, but for most people it doesn't, because it forces your hand just here. There's no room to move up and no real room to move back. It either kind of fits you, or it's a 3-finger knife, right? For me, it's a 4-finger knife. With this though, what's great is if you grab it here, you can kind of grab it like this. You can kind of choke up on it, almost like you have a choil, kind of do some cuts like this, right? You can kind of space your fingers out if you have bigger fingers. If you have really big fingers, this acts almost like a half, grip as well in the back. There's so many different ways that you can just let this either just sit in your hand and you're not really grabbing onto it, or you can really grip and get, some power cuts in there. It doesn't matter, it works. And it's these kind of attention to details that really sets Ben's knives apart. They look simple, but all the little things are nailed and perfect. Another thing I love is just supporting somebody that, we do love in the community. Ben is just quite a character, someone that we've all sort of, fallen in love with when going ahead and watching the Ben Banter the Banter series on Blade HQ, which was his birth child when he originally came out. And through that, you can just see a genuine character, somebody who does care, about the community. And again, just he's been popping up a lot more recently, promoting this knife and, collaborating with different things. And it's really nice to see that. And I'm always wanting to get one of his knives to promote him, which is something that, is definitely a bonus. You want to know that it's going to a good, person and a good family, to bring somebody up that you do support. So that is excellent as well. The next thing that I love, just kind of go into that attention to detail, but I do think it needs to be a little bit separated, is the quick scale change system. Now, this isn't the first knife in history that has done this. The Atom, for example, is one from TRM that has done that, but that is definitely on a little bit of a higher scale. And this is bringing it down more so for the common class of people. So, what exactly am I talking about? Well, Ben basically designed this knife that you adjust the pivot and then just set it as is without any blade play. And then if you ever get bored of the scales or you want to customize, he's actually created these scales. And the only thing you need to do to take them out, as you can see, there's no D-shaped pivots here that go ahead and rely on that structurally from the pivot side. You just take out this screw here, this screw, and the plate, and then your pocket clip 2 screws and those 2 screws as well. Then they come apart like so, and there is a holistic separate chassis underneath the liners, right? And the back spacers that are sitting right there, and they have their own screws and constructions as well. So you could, in a 8 to 10 minute, time frame, say, hey, you know what? I'm carrying my brass EDC. I want to show off my, brass Pirate Pete Life coin and, some sort of brass pin and flashlight or whatever. You could put those on. Then the next day, if you were doing like Carta, you could put those on right in a couple days. And then he has his own stock scales that he's making and even having designs printed on as well. And to that, those are the only scales that are available right now. That's where these grayish blue color scales come from, and these are the stock ones. But as I said in a previous video, I think this knife is going to take off on the customization front because Ben has also released the CAD file for these scales free. You can just download it. So that means if you're Rips Garage Tech, if you're Rock Scale Design, if you're Sharp Press Knives, you just simply put this into CAD, run it, and then hand finish it. You had to do no design work. Or if you want to tweak it and you do want to add, a little mini choil area and make this a little thicker, right? And then make something that's just slightly different, you could do that really easily with little to no work because you already have the standard CAD file that you just plug and play. So I think we're going to see scales coming up left and right, fat carbon fiber, linen micarta, burlap, XYZ, and everything from left to right, and hopefully then titanium and things like that. I'm really excited to see what people are able to do with this knife. And that's one thing that's I just love as well with the knife. I also kind of mentioned it, but I think this is an excellent action, right? I mean, it's on bearings, right? But I mean, it just fires hard, reliable, makes a good sound, and I really do just love that this is able to be fidgeted, even though this is sort of a tame, knife as well. And to that point, I do also love that this knife is kind of unoffensive, right? It's a small knife, but it feels, full size in the hand because you don't have these defined points as I mentioned. So even if you were some big, massive hand, and you held it like this, it's still comfortable, even though it is a smaller sub 3-inch blade. That does also mean it's going to be legal in a lot of places, and that also means that if you just take this and slow roll it in a Starbucks and you cut a string off your pants and then you just slowly, it's not going to be something like a big, oh yeah, let me get with my freaking high vis yellow Demco. You know what I mean? It's just going to be a lot more tame and, again, fit that EDC, just I need a tool to work and use and then put it back and go on about my day. It's really perfect for that. Things to dislike about this knife. So the first thing I would say is the fact that with this knife itself, again, I like D2 personally, but we've seen better. I mean, we had Nitro V on its brother, the baby Banter, right? And it's right around this price point, $7 more. There really wouldn't be too much of a hard to ask to get that steel. 14C28N, which Laren Thompson says is the best EDC steel. Come on, we could have had a perfect stainless, with a good, edge retention and a decent amount of toughness and really high corrosion resistance, and easy to sharpen and all that stuff. That's just where I thought naturally this would go instead of D2. I mean, we are working with QSP, which is another thing I like. You know what I mean? Love the Penguin. Have high praise for that, and this is definitely blowing me away with the quality that is coming out for the price, right? I also love the fact that this does feel like it has a soul. It's not just like another, knife that has come out that sort of gets boring. I do want to carry this, right? And a little bit of that is probably because of Ben, right? But like I said, to that point, the dislike, the first thing is the D2. The second thing that I dislike is the fact that with this knife, some knives, when you go to adjust the pivot, like these two guys I keep pulling in here, once they get tight, they're kind of like, when you're doing the micro adjustments, it feels really tight, and then you have to kind of tighten it to get all that blade play, out. With this, it's kind of like, you go like this, and it feels like the screw is very loose, right? But the blade play goes away, and then if you loosen it a little bit, you've like completely unloosened it. It's like really hair tight, there's like low friction, so it's easy to spin a lot and over tighten the knife basically. What that also means is, because there isn't a lot of pressure clamping it together, if you don't like take this knife apart, which I had to do, put it in alcohol, do all the 9 yards, wipe it down, put the Loctite on with no oil in the chassis, let it sit for 2 whole days, right? Jump on one foot, scratch your head, pray to the heavens above, that the Loctite's just going to break free because there isn't all this friction or tightness in the screws. It's very easy to back out, right? So that is something that does bug me, especially with this whole system where once you set your knife, as long as you don't get it dirty, you just kind of oil it out, blow it out, and you can do the scale swap instead. Another thing that I don't like is the fact that when I took the scales off to do said Loctiting, so this is permanently adjustment, which once I did it and I rubbed it, did the alcohol thing and put the Loctite on, it hasn't come loose, so that is a bonus, right? But is the fact that the scales that are like T6, they feel really loose. And I was like, maybe it's a T7, that would be weird. But the T7 was too big, it wouldn't fit in the hole. So it was a T6, and that screw just went and stripped right out, right? So I had to like tighten a little, push really hard, tighten a little, push really hard, right? They're like really shallow screws, and there was something going on with that one where it just was way too loose. So that is something that I don't like. But a good thing is off the Knafs website, you can get replacement parts, which is definitely something that, is a plus to go ahead and call out if we're talking about some of the negatives on that point. Really, there's not too much to dislike otherwise about this knife. And there's definitely nothing that is rubbish about this knife. So, to kind of go ahead and wrap everything up, I didn't expect, that this knife was going to be bad, knowing Ben's other things. But also when I kind of got this knife, I was thinking, I'll pick it up just to support him, but I don't know if I'm going to be, too wild about it. But I do it's a real joy to go ahead and carry this. Something that is just sort of, working tool. It's not super duper expensive, super fancy. So if I, want to cut open something, that I normally wouldn't with my other knives, I don't really have to worry about it. It's deep carry. You just slide it in and out of the pocket. It's, decently grippy, but not overly grippy. It's comfortable in hand. You really don't think about it because of that quick use action. Cut open something, go, bang, boom, you're done. And you can even fidget it. I mean, it's a knife I would recommend anybody, and it is one of the most recommendable knives that I would say for somebody who just wants a tool, is starting out, or is just wanting something to check out and doesn't know what your next piece is going to get. If you've been thinking about this knife at all, and the knife design doesn't put you off, I 100% say to go for it. This is just a masterclass, as most things that Ben designs. So that's everything in a nutshell. I hope you guys did go ahead and enjoy this video, as I had a lot of fun going ahead and making it. Oh gosh, sorry, one of the most important things. What I love about this also is the way that this cuts. It's very thin behind the edge, and it just obliterates the material. That's one of the most important things, and I almost completely forgot it. See, need to make more videos more often. I'm getting a little rusty, sorry. But anyways, I did enjoy making this video, and if you liked it, please go ahead and give a like as well as subscribe. I also love to fellowship with you guys, so if you want to leave some comments down in the chat, I would really like that. Of course, most importantly, I appreciate you taking time to go ahead and watch this video, as there's so many other great content creators out there, and you've decided to click on my little channel here. Of course, I hope everybody has a great rest of your week and great start to the week. Everybody, stay safe. Peace.